Hello and welcome to the Terrace Scottish Football Podcast. My name is Craig Telfer, and on this occasion I am joined by my close associate Shaughan McGuigan.
Hello there.
And you know what happens when the Deirdre Barlow and the Dev Allahan of the Terrace get together. That's right, we are going to have a one-night stand at Christmas, agree to keep it a secret, but fall out with each other when Shaughan starts going out with my daughter.
I just presumed that was one of her husbands.
No, he was. No, I don't watch Coronation Street. Most
You
people
used to.
know me.
No,
I never watched Coronation Street. I've never watched Coronation Street. I've always been strictly EastEnders. I'm a strictly EastEnders, a wee bit of Hollyoaks, but strictly an EastEnders kind of guy. But there was a picture I remember seeing of Dev winching Deirdre, and he's like kissing the side of her face, and it's very smoky, very exotic. And when Craig Fowler is promoting this podcast, that's the image that I hope he uses. All you need to do, Fowler, when you're listening, search for Deirdre Barlow and Dev Allahan, and you will get the picture that Shaughan and I are looking for.
And is he actually literally kissing the side of her face, or is he kissing her lips and you see it from the side?
No, he's kind of like, he's sort of like seducing her like that. He's got holding his hands. This is great. Obviously, if you're watching this on YouTube, you'll have an idea of what I'm saying. But he's kissing her like that. It's a grotesque image, but I think it's one that befits you and I very well.
Grotesque.
Well, Shaughan, I don't know. I can't think of any other adjectives to describe us. That's perhaps the best one. But Shaughan and I, you know what happens when we get together? We are doing our patented 3-game podcast. If you look it up online, it's a format that Shaughan and I and Craig Fowler slightly own. We will be discussing one match from the Championship, another match from League 2, and a final fixture from League 1. I've done that the wrong way around. And hopefully, we might have a laugh along the way. Now, last time out, you got Fraser Clark and Craig Fowler talking, and Fowler was like some AI machine that had scraped all of its data from Pi and Bovril and then converted it into speech. So you've had to put up with the rest. Now you're listening to the best. And if you can see me on YouTube, I've tried putting my hair in a ponytail. Shaughan and I had some technical issues trying to get logged on here. And in my frustration, I yanked it about my hair. It's come out. And I kind of look like a tree hugger. All I need is an ear piercing. And I look like someone that would wear tie-dye clothes.
Or a jumper, an old jumper with ill-fitting with holes.
Yeah, it looks like almost like a poncho, but it's actually a jumper. Something that you could imagine a Mexican dog giving birth on. Yeah, you can. It's a very specific kind of jumper.
Talking about things that dogs would give birth on, I have watched all episodes of Ouija's.
Yes!
Since we last spoke. Do you know what? I really thought I needed to bite the bullet because you pestered me for ultimately years to watch Bedale Syndrome.
Yes.
I cannot go through this again. Let's just get it out of the way.
Now, full disclosure, Shaughan and I were supposed to record a podcast. I think it was in mid-March, a couple of weeks ago, certainly. And we couldn't do it because Shaughan was having broadband problems. Anytime we tried to log on, it didn't work. And unfortunately, sorry, I beg your pardon, it worked for about the first 10 minutes and then it completely packed in. And in that 10 minutes, Shaughan and I had a very in-depth discussion about Ouija's, a sort of I'm going to use the term, it's more of a sitcom, but more sit than com, based in Glasgow, written by a couple of young guys. And one of the reasons I watched it was recommended to us by Craig Cairns of the Terrace. I've watched it loads of times. I think I've watched Ouija's perhaps the equivalent of Bedale Syndrome. I think I've watched it more than anyone else. And one of the reasons that we discussed in the podcast is a guy called Liam Innes who got in touch with us to say he actually had a cameo in Ouija's. He played Barry, the lad at Berry's party who's very drunk and ends up going on stage. And he said, Shaughan, that when we do our deep dive into Ouija's, much like we did with Bedale Syndrome and so on, he would like to come on and share his experiences of starring in Ouija. So, Liam, the offer is open to you. Just get in touch with myself and Shaughan and we'll get a time together. But Shaughan, what did you think of Ouija's?
I didn't laugh a lot, so that's probably a bad sign.
Okay, well, you laughed more than I did anyway.
However, I don't know if I would stick the boot in as much as we stuck the boot into Bedale Syndrome, because I think it came from the right place. And ultimately, it was people who hadn't written for television before, people who hadn't acted before. It had a tiny budget, and it just wasn't a great first attempt, I suppose.
I think you're right. What the impression I got with the script was it felt very much like a first draft. there was a lot of stuff that happened in it that I thought, well hang on, how does that work? How does that work? For instance, the final episode where Steve is finally going to get together with Lucy, his love interest in it, and they're having a party in looks like a social club or a church hall, and she's like, I'll get you at the bar. Yet that you can see him standing at the bar and she's in shots in the background, and yet she never thinks to come up and speak to him. I thought that was strange. And then another one as well on the final episode where they've got a chance to go for a job in London and they leave the party early. They're not in any massive rush to get to London, despite the fact they've got to be there for the morning. And it looks like they're leaving the party in the middle of the day. It doesn't look like it's very late on at all.
I was worried. If you think back to the very first moments of the very first episode, which you've watched it more than me, and like the very first joke I think is one of the flatmates is clearing beans from one side of his plate to the other, and he goes, "What are you doing?" He goes, "Oh well, like I don't like beans." And he goes, "Well, why did you ask me to get beans?" And I went, "Because I thought it would have been good to have pie and beans for my breakfast." I said, "Well, that doesn't really make any sense, nor is it funny." So I was worried right from the word go.
Well, you said you did laugh at parts. What bits did you laugh at?
No, I don't. I think I didn't laugh very much, is what I said.
Right, okay.
If I was going to be totally accurate, I didn't laugh.
Okay. I thought Dylan Bloor's quite good, isn't it? He's the guy that plays Berry, the skinny English fella.
I thought he came across like a bit like a serial killer, and not necessarily in the series, but potentially in real life. I got a bad vibe from him.
I think he was doing something at a Play a Pie and a Pint in Oranmore. I saw his face plastered up and stuff, although that could have been an advert for a Play a Pie and a Pint. It could have been, have you seen this man get in contact with Crime Stoppers? One of the things I did say, Shaughan, it's like when I play five-a-side football down at Glasgow Green, I walk down past Belgrove and I think I walked past the place where Ouija is filmed because there's a scene, the pair of them start in a Swingers advert.
Yes.
And they're leaving the flat together. And the young guy, Kenny, who's got a recurring role in it, sort of the guy with the glasses, he says, "Oh, here you two are swingers now." That bit is sure that's filmed in Brigton near Templeton on the Green.
Right.
I think that's on there because you can see a shop called Samantha's. It does like Hot and Cold. You can see that in the background. So that's maybe where it was filmed. That's where somebody's flat was, and that's where they're able to film it.
I mean that's something to be excited about, isn't it?
But certainly, it's the only thing is I never really got a sense of Glasgow for it. I never, other than it's a terrible name for a show, I didn't get a sense of Glasgow. That was something else.
And there wasn't too many Glaswegians in
it. The main characters were Glaswegian.
But was anybody else in it Glaswegian?
The girl Lucy was from East Kilbride. The woman Sapphire, I know for a fact she's from Falkirk. Louise Smith, the woman that played her, and Berry is English, so maybe not.
There you go.
Maybe just call it Central Scotland.
It's called People.
Yeah, People. The People Show. But anyway, enough about Ouija's. There you go. You can, just with a lot of these podcasts, you can skip past the first 7 or 8 minutes and then you can get into it. I remember someone once said, if you skip to this point, if you want to enjoy the rubbish, but I think that was a Dundee United supporter. Look, mate, it's not all about the football. It's about the experience.
There's something for everyone. There's something for everyone.
There's something for everyone. Do you like television? Then yes, listen to the first 10 minutes of the Lower League podcast. Do you like football? Then listen after the first 10 minutes to the Lower League podcast. It really is as simple as that. But you want to get on to the football?
Let's.
Excellent. Now, Shaughan, we normally start with the Championship, but I think on this occasion, we have to start with League One. And we really have to say congratulations to Falkirk Football Club. They are the first champions in the SPFL. They had won the title without kicking a ball. Hamilton Accies drew with Queen of the South, confirmed this. And Falkirk were playing at 5:30 at Lynx Park against Montrose. Now, it might have been easy for Falkirk to pitch up against the Mo and have a laugh, but they absolutely victimised Montrose here, turning one of the most dominant performances we've seen of the whole season and won the match 7-1. And I suppose we can kind of talk about the match. The match really seems secondary to the main part of the discussion, but what did you make of Falkirk's title win, Shaughan?
Are they probably the most impressive League One winner since Rangers? I didn't go back and check, but off the top of my head, they probably are.
Mm-hmm.
I know we were quite praiseworthy about Dunfermline last season. I suppose kind of similar-ish in terms of, at the start of the season, you think Falkirk could challenge Dunfermline. This season, you thought Hamilton would maybe give Falkirk a bit of a game, a bit of a challenge. But actually, Falkirk were just far too strong for them. And I think, unlike Dunfermline last season, Falkirk have done it in a more swashbuckling style that is more, it's kind of easier on the eye. Mm-hmm. And I think in terms of this season, they've just been a class above everybody else in that division. I think in terms of again, similar to Dunfermline last season, I think the kind of link between club and fans is the best it's been for some time. I thought on the terrace and behind the goals on Saturday.
Looked amazing. Looked absolutely
brilliant.
There's a bit where I think it must be through the first half. It must have to be the third goal goes in. They're actually bouncing. Mm-hmm. They're all bouncing in unison, and it looked like something you might see in like a second tier match in Germany or Italy. It looked a lot of fun.
It really did. And I think praise to John McGuigan. I mean, he had certainly the second half of last season in the playoffs had an absolute stinker. A lot of Falkirk fans, and you couldn't necessarily disagree, thought he should have been jettisoned in the summer, but he's improved players that were already there. Yep. He signed really well in the summer, signed really well in January as well, I think, and fair play to them.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree with everything you've said. I think it's been an incredible season, and I've written down Falkirk's journey, I suppose over the last 6 years, to how they found themselves in League One. And just at some point in the future, Shaughan and I are going to take a deep dive into Falkirk's 5 years in League One, and we'll cover all these topics in a bit more detail. But I was kind of looking at all the bad things. This was just off the top of my head. I've got about 11 bullet points here of the bad things that happened. So you start off by Paul Hartley coming in and binning off Lee Miller and Mark Kerr. I think it was Christmas Eve. They were told to go and find new clubs. Dismantling the youth academy to supplement the first team. And you can't necessarily lay all the blame on Paul Hartley on that one. That's got to come at executive level. But nevertheless, you're sacrificing the future to deal with the present. Embarking on one of the worst recruitment drives in living memory in the summer of 2018 with some of the guys that they brought in. Poaching Ray McKinnon from Greenup Morton after he'd been there 3 months and then having to pay a massive fee to the Capello club. Ultimately getting relegated into League One. Craxton Big Sexy coming in and then getting binned off, and Gary Holt coming in. Needing 2 points from their final 6 matches to finish in the playoffs, but finishing in 5th place instead. The Q&A session with the infamous "That's not a question, that's a statement" answer. Gary Holt's turn as a father of the bride in some horrendous speech to try and curry favour with people that plain just don't like him. Martin Rennie, a proper Falkirk man and a real coach coming in. Awful. Lee Griffiths coming in at an exorbitant wage, man. Didn't score a single goal that mattered, but my goodness, could he take a corner kick? Kenny Miller being in charge for a couple of matches at the end of the season. Losing the league to Dunfermline Athletic, rarely laying a glove on them, and then losing the playoffs to Airdrieonians. That's horrendous. I mean, that is a lot of pain for supporters to eat. This season seems to just obliterate all that. Mm-hmm. All that stuff we went through there, that is 100% in the rearview mirror. And for the first time in 6 years, this is a team that the fans can really, really be proud of. And it's something, man, that I was thinking about this because, like, see losing. See, unless you're like a Rangers Celtic supporter, your team loses most of the time. That's just the way it is. You're a spoke in the wheel. Sometimes you're up, sometimes you're down. You can take losing, but what you can't take is being embarrassed off the pitch. And some of the stuff that I think Falkirk fans had to go through was quite humiliating. So to have a season like this, I'm not going to say they deserve it, because everyone goes through bad seasons. But Falkirk fans, it seemed like acute pain they'd experienced during that period. This season has just well and truly, it's like the perfect antidote to all that shite that they've had to suck up during that period.
Yeah, and not only do they deserve to revel in it, there'll be obvious relief because they're getting out of League One. But there must have been because I was starting to think it as well, like you've just went through, 11 points there or something, right? And you were actually starting to wonder, like, where is this leading? Is this just like a tailspin of despair that might end up with them becoming like a part-time team? And then suddenly it's a lot more difficult to get out of League One. So the fact that they have won the league so convincingly, managed to get out of League One, it is a kind of mixture of joy and relief. And I know you don't want to get too far ahead of themselves because they're just enjoying it for the moment, but it's impossible not to think of next season and think, they might have a wee chance next season as well. I don't know if you necessarily buy into that, but I think it'll be a very open division next season, and I think it's very unusual for League One champions not to do quite well in the next season in the Championship. And the fact that this will be, I think if Ross County come down, like maybe if somebody does beat Ross County, for example, in the playoffs, that makes things a bit harder. But if it's just Swap and Dundee United for Livingston, this might be the first Championship in a while that doesn't have a team you wouldn't normally expect to be in the Championship, if that makes sense.
I'll address the 2 points here. The first one was about the level you said about League One, and I saw that. I mean, I think it was Calvin Miller, who is probably still in the pints just now, judging by the way he was celebrating on Saturday. But it was something that Calvin Miller was like, you're just like well done for winning League One, like Michael Owen sticking away a penalty against a child. But I don't think it really matters at this stage, like what level Falkirk should or shouldn't be at. It was like Brecon City when they won the Highland League a couple of, like the last year, where it's like, Brecon are probably at a level the club shouldn't be. I mean, they've never been a Highland League club, but after all that, like successive relegations, finishing bottom, having a degree of success, that's absolutely amazing. And so it doesn't matter what level it is that Falkirk are a full-time team and they're the biggest dog in the pound. Yes, completely understand that. But to celebrate it, they absolutely deserve to celebrate it. And John McGuigan and the players and the supporters should be really, really enjoying it. As for next season, you're right. I think that Falkirk will have had an eye on next season for a while now. I think maybe similar to like Stenhousemuir, how the league's ahead. I'd be surprised if like John McGuigan isn't already speaking to players to bring into the team. There are a couple of areas that might need addressed. I think that goalkeeper is an area that they need sorted out, because I don't really buy into the theory of having two number ones. I think you just want an outstanding number one and some kid who's on who you might need in case of an emergency. But you want an outstanding number one. I'm not sure Nicky Hogarth is that outstanding number one. You might need a bit of competition up front for Ross McKeever. You might need someone else in the middle of the park. However, that stuff can wait until the summer. I think you're absolutely correct. If it's a straight swap between the Championship champions and the bottom of the Premiership, say it's Dundee United for Livingston, and then you just swap Falkirk for Arbroath, then you've got a division there with 10 teams of all broadly similar sizes.
Yep.
So some larger teams than others, and you might put Falkirk in that larger category. But broadly, 10 teams who could see themselves as legitimate, not just playoff winners, but title winners. And I do think that Falkirk, not to get too carried away here, but Falkirk could go into next season thinking we've got a chance of winning this.
I mean, I think so. If you want to, if you look at what Dunfermline have done this season, I know they've had a difficult season in general. Excuse me. However, at the moment they can still finish top four. I do think that this season's Falkirk team is better than last season's Dunfermline team. So if Dunfermline have a chance of getting promoted this season, which they still do, slim as it may be at this moment in time, there's no reason why Falkirk won't perform better next time around than Dunfermline have this term. And when you have, as you say, a broadly similar standard of team at the top of the league, then it would be, if I was a Falkirk fan, I would have high hopes for next season, definitely.
And the thing is as well, I don't think it is. I mean, it is maybe getting carried away because the team are doing fantastically well at the moment. And you can only really judge how well you do once you get into that division. However, when you look at Falkirk's results and their performances against teams from the Championship they played, I'm sure they played Dundee United. They beat them in the Challenge Cup.
Yep.
Beat Queen's Park in the Challenge Cup. All decent sides. So I suppose if you're going to compare how they're going to get on, if you can take on decent teams from that league and go toe-to-toe with them and beat them, then you'd fancy yourselves to have a go again against them on a normal basis next season. So yeah. I don't see why not. And another observation that I had, Shaughan, from this match, it felt fitting that it was Montrose that they beat, because to me, Montrose felt like a bit of a bogey team for Falkirk during the time in League One, especially in the 2021-22 season. They took 10 points from the 4 meetings. And yes, Paul Sheeran and Martin Rennie managed some of those matches, so I'm not sure how much stock you want to take in them. But it felt like it was something was being exercised there by going to Montrose and completely beaten up. It was like something out of Bad Girls. Like it's the final day of your prison sentence, and so you just want to completely fuck up the person who's really, really been annoying you. So you slash them up in the prison yard before you're paroled. That's what this felt like here.
And the thing is, like we shouldn't forget that this Montrose team, like they're still a good team. Like Montrose have still got a chance. I know they've dropped out the top four. They've still got a decent chance of finishing in the top four. I'd still maybe expect them to do so. So they have an outside chance of getting promoted. It's not as if they went someplace. It was as if they went to Edinburgh and won 7-1. They went to a good League One team and they just swept them away. And I know like the goals, but I know as a fan, I hate conceding a goal right at the start of the game. I hate conceding a goal just after you've scored. Like you almost feel pathetic for celebrating your goal. It's very annoying. And then I hate conceding right at the start of the second half. Montrose done all of those things.
Yeah.
So that must have been completely dispiriting, not just for the fans and the players. And I got the impression, certainly when I went to 4-1, it wasn't necessarily down in tools in Montrose, but certainly the heads went down, put it that way. But like to go to Montrose and score 7, that's like just hugely, just another impressive thing that this Falkirk team's achieved this season.
I thought it was, I've only watched the highlights from this on Falkirk TV, but I think this is probably the worst performance from a side I've seen in the SPFL so far this season. I think there's been a couple recently that you can maybe say. You can maybe say like St Mirren capitulating against Kilmarnock, Clyde thumping Stennismuir. But at least Clyde scored a goal from like 30 yards, and it's when that happens, it's like there's just nothing you can do. There's nothing you can do. This was a performance though, like. A lot of the goals were, and the times of the goals you mentioned were horrendous. The first one there, like Cammy Gill coming out in fresh air and a clearance and giving Ross McKeever somewhere to shoot, easy to shoot. And I think it was it the fourth and the fifth goals must have come within about 30 seconds of one another from the first goal, from that goal going into the kickoff. And that as you said it there, that's pathetic. And it's just not like Montrose. Montrose are a good team. Links Park can be a difficult place to go. I'd say in Montrose's sympathy that I think that outside their back four, I don't think there were any defensive-minded players on the pitch. I think Paul Watson was missing, Terry Maston was missing, guys who you would normally just have in the middle of the park. A bit older, but guys that can at least like protect the defence, screen the ball. They didn't have any of that, and they looked so badly exposed. I thought a really bad goal they lost. And this is a really, really good in Falkirk's part, right enough. It was Aidan Nisbet's goal, number 2. I was watching Aidan Nisbet's position. He comes from outside the box and he just dawdles into it. And I think Andy Steeves realises, but by the time he comes across the cover, Nisbet's a very nice finish, sort of just angled, cushioned finish into the far side of the net. And even worse, that was bad. But the goal, God, I can't even remember who scored it. But it's the one, somebody gets the ball past, he's got his back to goal, he gets the ball passed into his feet on the 6-yard box and is allowed to turn and finish. That just doesn't happen. If you're a serious football team, that kind of stuff doesn't happen. But I think as you put it down to a number of factors. Montrose missing players, every single player in that team just having a bad game, coming up against a team who had won the league, thousands of Falkirk fans there. All those sort of factors just feed into a really bad performance from Montrose and just a very, very good one from Falkirk.
Yeah, very much so. I mean, that like the last goal, like Aidan Quinn just falling on his arse as the ball goes through his legs, just kind of summed up their afternoon. Just a dreadful performance from them. Very good one from and a very good one from Falkirk. Whether it impacts Montrose's season kind of going forward, I mean, they've got Edinburgh this weekend, so a chance to bounce back. So, I think Alloa will get in the playoffs, and then that probably leaves it between Montrose and Cove. I suppose Montrose have got the Falkirk game out of the way. Like Cove have still got Falkirk to play this Saturday. So maybe Montrose have the slightly easier running, but I think it will be very, very tight now.
And that leads us on very nicely to whether or not Falkirk can remain this season unbeaten. They've played 31 games, yet to lose. And their upcoming fixtures, Cove Rangers, Hamilton Accies, Kelty Hearts, and an Athletic, Alloa Athletic. Can they go unbeaten?
I think they will. Because I think I get the impression that McGuigan and the players will take huge pride in an unbeaten season and an invincible season. And I think as long as they turn up Like, they've already proven that they are far and away better than everybody else in the division. And as long as they turn up and perform, I don't see why they wouldn't.
The big thing is though, Shaughan, it's whether or not John McGuigan wants to play well, because he's largely trusted the same group of players. Maybe there's a couple of adjustments there, but I think if you go and look through the Falkirk team, you know what the back four. Maybe the goalkeeper will change on a month by month basis, but you know who the back four is. You know who the two are. You know who the three are behind, and Ross McKeever will play up front. That's the way it's going to work most weeks. Do you want to keep on going with that? Or do you give the fringe players a shot? Guys who train really hard, guys who haven't had much of an opportunity this season. Now, John McGuigan has done that when they played at Edinburgh City back in January, and Falkirk found themselves 2-0 down at the interval. Yes, they had the opportunity to score, and they created decent chances. On another day, they could have gone in 2-2. They could have gone 3-2 by the interval. They didn't. And I think he made 5 substitutions at half-time. They ultimately eked out a point from that match. But what would you do if you're the manager? And there's, because I know that the unbeaten thing would be amazing, and this would go down as a landmark season in the club's history. Doesn't matter what level it's at. Doesn't matter what level it's at all. But you go unbeaten, that's a phenomenal achievement. What do you do? Keep with what you're doing, or give some of the fringe players a go?
I think you can keep with what you're doing, but still give the fringe players minutes if things are going well. I certainly wouldn't be making wholesale changes like he did with the Edinburgh game. Maybe you can make tweaks. Maybe you can make 1 or 2 changes every week. But if I was him, I think he absolutely will be desperate to go the entire season unbeaten. So I don't think he'll make too many changes week to week.
I can see them beating Cove Rangers, and I can see them beating Hamilton. I think Cove Rangers, they will, because of the idea of Paul Hartley having to clap them onto the pitch. I think there'll be supporters who will be absolutely delighted to see him having to clap them onto the pitch, because, as we mentioned at the start, there's a subset of Falkirk supporters who really still hold Hartley responsible for sending the club down on its trajectory. He wasn't solely responsible, right enough, but he certainly played a big part. And I think they'll want to beat Cove Rangers. I think that's a team that since they've come into the division with Falkirk, they just haven't liked them because of the Paul Hartley connection. And there's Hamilton Accies, who at one point where they certainly went toe-to-toe with them for, I think, about certainly half of the season at least, and then Hamilton started dropping away. But I think they'll want to just big dog Hamilton. You can see them beating them like 4-0 or something like that. And then, no disrespect to the other teams, but I think Kelty and Annan, they should be able to beat them. And Alloa, I suppose it depends what the state is at the end of the season there. If Alloa have already cemented 3rd place, have already cemented 4th place, how it goes. But it's not out with the realms of possibility. But I suppose, given the finishing lines in sight and what's at stake, and that you could be at Invincibles, I think that adds, like, the league's not done yet. I think that's what's fair to say. So I think if you're a Falkirk fan, you'd be really looking forward to watching the between now and the end of the season, because you could really be part of something special.
And I know you don't always necessarily go with it just because it's what the fans want, but I don't think Falkirk fans would necessarily want. Like, I think they would rather go for the 36 games unbeaten than give fringe players an extra game and a half.
I'm thinking from my John McGuigan perspective. Like, that's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking, what would he do? I mean, would I want to go the whole season unbeaten? Perhaps. Would I want to recall Brad Mackay and give him a shot in some of the games? Perhaps. It's a real conundrum for the manager to think about. And I suppose as well, Shaughan, with Falkirk, it's a team that we've taken immense joy from their suffering over the last 5 years. I think that when we've been doing the podcast, like, the games that we select, when Falkirk lose, they were always quite good fun to talk about. And although we have enjoyed that, you also have to give credit where it's due. I think we can always do that. You give them credit where it's due, and it's just been an excellent season. And more than anything else, the fans have got a club and a bunch of players and a manager that they can be proud of once again.
Yeah, I don't begrudge them that at all, and I'm very much looking forward to Falkirk Wraith Rovers games next season. I think they could be, if Wraith are in the championship, I suspect they might be, but I think there'll be 4 very interesting games next season.
Well, that leads us nicely on to our second game, and this is the game that was in the championship, because this was not quite a title decider because there's still a lot of games to go, but Dundee United and Wraith Rovers, neck and neck all season. This match between the two sides at Tannadice was very hotly anticipated, and it was the Arabs who came out on top, winning 2-0. Tony Watt scored a lovely goal just after 7 minutes, and Louis Maltz scored from the spot midway through the second half. United have consolidated their place at the summit of the division, 4 points clear of the Rovers, albeit having played a game more. But they've got the advantage going into this final run of fixtures, and it really is simple for Jim Goodwin's side. If you don't slip up, you win the title. Shaughan, you were at this match, one of the lucky few who managed to secure a ticket. How was it for you?
I see it of all the moments this season where Wraith have had an opportunity to, at one point, stretch their lead over Dundee United or overtake Dundee United. Like, there's been all this chat about, they've bottled it and like all this. All of them have been frustrating. But I think Saturdays might have been the worst, in my opinion. Like, even worse than the 4-4 with United and the 3-2 defeat to Arbroath. All very frustrating. But like the other ones, like those two in particular, an error from Dabrowski, throwing it in the net. However, mistakes happen in the Championship.
Yeah.
Mistakes happen. You've had a situation where Ali Adams scores something like about 100 yards. Well, there's not very much you can do about that, essentially.
I was going to say, like, mistakes happen. Goalkeeper scoring for 35 yards. These things happen.
And like the 0-0 draws with Queen's Park and Morton. Then Morton were 15 games unbeaten going into that one. Queen's Park are certainly a far better team than they were for the first half of the season. So I didn't really think those two 0-0 draws were the worst results. But I do think that this is the first example of Rovers shooting themselves in the foot before the game even started, in terms of how he chose to approach the game, both in terms of the formation of Ian Murray and the personnel that he picked. I thought in terms of the defence, the midfield, and up front, there was a kind of glaring omission in all three areas. And I think, although Dundee United played well and might have won the game no matter which team Ian Murray picked, I do think that the team that Murray started with was just the wrong side, and it certainly helped United.
We'll talk about the Rovers first then, because I think I want to talk up Dundee United because I only think that's fair. But we'll talk about the Rovers first, just since you've led us in there. You mentioned that you weren't happy. In fact, when you and I were selecting the games, you even said at the time that you were disappointed with his team selection. Who were the players that were missing that you'd like to see start the match? So
I think the best centre-half they have is Keith Watson. So he started on the bench, came on maybe midway through the first half. I think when Ewan Murray got a kick and went off with concussion. I think if they had another centre half and maybe Watson wasn't 100% fit, then fair enough. And Scott Brown has kind of filled in admirably, but ultimately he is a defensive midfielder playing at centre half, and I think he was very much found wanting at that first goal. He then went with one holding midfielder, or a formation that has a position for a holding midfielder. I thought he probably should have played two, but regardless, it was a 4-1-3-2. But he plays Kyle Turner as the holding midfielder.
Not holding
very
midfielder.
Very much isn't a holding midfielder. The three in front, fair enough. But then in terms of a forward, the best forward that I think they have is Jack Hamilton, and he's certainly the best forward in terms of winning headers, in terms of being a handful for defenders, in terms of his first touch, in terms of holding the ball up. He does all of those things very well, and Zach Rudden can't. And Lewis Vaughan has played particularly well for a few weeks now. And considering you're probably not going to have that much of the ball at Tannadice, you're certainly going to have less possession at Dundee United, you want to make the most of it, you want to hold on to it, you want to keep the ball in their final third as much as possible. And that just didn't happen with Zach Rudden up front. And even like at half time, I thought, right, being up against that first half, United, although Rovers had a flurry of chances in the first kind of 5 minutes or so, they were a wee bit fortunate to get to half time at 1-0. I thought, right, they can't play any worse in the second half, and they'll change it. Murray will change something at half time. And he didn't. And even after 10 minutes of the second half, when he made the double change, he just swapped two strikers for a different two forwards. Like that vacuum in the middle of the park was still there. So I thought it was a missed opportunity. As much as it was Dundee United away, I thought there was a good chance for Wraith. I thought if they played well, I thought if they frustrated them, kept it tight, then Jim Goodwin, I think, panics. And I don't always think Jim Goodwin's substitutions are great. And I thought he might overthink it. But I almost felt like Ian Murray, in the week building up to the game, overthought things. So I was disappointed.
Watching the highlights back, when I watched Dundee United's first goal, and it's a punt up the park from Jack Walton, Louis Moult flicks it on for Tony Watt, and it's a really, really good finish. He controls the ball with his right foot, and then I think it's a very quick finish, just to hit it with his left. Really, really good goal. But the fact that it's a long ball into the box, Louis Moult, who probably in division, best back to goal striker, someone who's very, very difficult to mark, someone a big, strong boy, someone who's going to push you around. And you see Scott Brown is the one that's marking me. Think, right, that should be like Keith Watson should be on.
Yes.
And just seeing that there, my immediate thought was, well, there must be injuries. That's why Scott Brown's playing at the back. Otherwise, why would you want to weaken the middle of the park? Because we know at Dundee United, they haven't played well this season when Ross Docherty's been missing. Now, Ross Docherty is back playing in this game, and I couldn't really tell how influential he was in the game by the highlights, but you just know because of this stat of him missing, he obviously, even just being there, his presence gives the team such a lift. So I wanted to see Scott Brown there, who is quite combative and someone who could go toe-to-toe with him, because like in terms of like Kyle Turner, yeah, he can do a bit of everything, but he's better further forward, better link in the play. Same with guys like Stanton. I really like Stanton, better going further forward, whereas Brown's just like an old-fashioned number 6. And you're just nodding away like if anyone just repeating your point.
I totally agree. But even at, let's say Watson wasn't 100% fit, and they've got 3 games in a week coming up, so maybe there was a concern about that. You still want to play a holding midfielder with that formation, but you've got Sean Byrne on the bench. You've got Ross Matthews, who dropped to the bench, who's come back in recently and done very, very well. So to see certainly Matthews drop him out and Byrne not coming back in to play essentially somebody who's very, very much more attack-minded in that holding role was just very, very strange. Very strange.
Were you the guy that threw the bottle onto the pitch at the Tony Watt's goal?
No, but that was mortifying. Like, it's bad enough to see a team go down to an early goal in a very big game. And then to see, there was a bottle, but there was like maybe 3 or 4 other things as well. Like very, very embarrassing. I'm glad they've caught the guy and told him to
is that right?
Fuck off. Aye. Yeah.
So is he what was the punishment?
So he's been banned from Starts Park. Dundee United's statement suggested that the police might have been involved. I don't know, but I just know from Ray's statement that he was banned indefinitely from Starts Park or something along those lines.
Right, okay. That's I suppose that's ultimately a good thing, because that's like a half bottle of vodka. You could really hurt someone if that hits him. I did see you running towards the front. Were you the guy in the white jacket that ran towards the front to shout at them? Got to say, man, like I mentioned Watt's kick. I made a note there. It actually looks like something out of Tekken. Sort of like a one-touch, a kick like that. I can imagine King dishing that out as one of his moves. When Murray went off in the 23 minutes, I think he took a kick to the face from Louis Moult, and Watson had to come on. Did that change things at all? Or was it just more of the same?
I thought Watson had a good game, to be fair. Although, in fairness, he arguably quite lucky to stay on.
Yeah, I mean,
like, he was on a booking, and he probably had another couple of situations where he may have been a wee bit lucky to stay on. But no, for somebody who didn't start the game, I wasn't sure if he was 100% fit. He played as if he was. As I say, I think he's the best centre-half that they have at the club.
Yeah, it seemed to go, again, going by the highlights, it seemed like you really did struggle to deal with Louis Moult. As I said, any time the ball was well up to him, and I don't know if it was Dundee United going direct. I suppose if you're winning headers, then you imagine there is a degree of directness there. But anytime the ball went up to him, he was winning the stuff. He was very good at just knocking the ball down for Tony Watt and anyone else that came into his orbit. Was that the case? Did they struggle to deal with Moult?
Oh, aye, the whole game, and Tony Watt. Like, the two of them just linked up so effectively. But just like the middle of the park as well, like Sibbald and Docherty, like they played class as well. Like they just dominated possession, and in terms of chances created, like the second half was scrappy. But even then, like United, I can't remember who it was that had a header. It might have been Moult, actually. That was maybe only 7 or 8 yards out that he should have done better. So certainly 2-0 was not a kind of flattering scoreline for United. It was still deserved. I mean, Rudden hit the bar towards the closing stages of the first half.
Good effort.
It was, but very much out of the blue. Like, it's not as if the momentum had been swinging that way for 5 or 10 minutes beforehand. Ewan Murray missed a chance at 0-0 right at the start of the game that he maybe should have done better. A kind of free-ish header after I think a set piece, I think, from a corner kick. But no, Wraith were very, very much second best for the entire game.
Yeah, of course. You mentioned Watson's performance, but he did give away a penalty. He wrapped his arm. I know you're kind of saying that it's one of those ones. Was it soft? Yes. Did he have his arms around him? Yes. Does Tony Watt make the most of it? Yes. But is it a penalty? Yes.
It was. You know how is it like a Duplo figure where like the arms?
Yeah, they're just
bring the arms up. But that's how he kind of defended it. So I thought it was Mo. It was Mo that went down. I think it was a dive, but also still a penalty. Like I didn't have any issues with it as a penalty, but I don't think Moult goes down because of anything Watson does. But Watson's actions, the way he defended it was very naive, and I totally understand why the referee gave it. I'd have been screaming for it. Yes, soft, but I probably warranted one.
We've got 5 games of the season remaining. Well, 6 in Wraith Rovers' case, and United have got this 4-point advantage. Do you see the Rovers clawing it back?
No. I know they've got 3 home games coming up, so they have United this Saturday, then Partick Thistle on Tuesday, then Airdrie on Tuesday, Partick Thistle on Saturday. No, I don't see it. And the reason for that is between September and January, I think Wraith Rovers looked like a team that could win the league. Like 16 games unbeaten or something they went. But since January, since the second defeat against Airdrie, I think it was maybe start of January or midway through January, they've never really clicked as effectively since then. And it's been very 2 steps forward, 1 step back, I suppose. And for them to, with 6 games remaining, probably have to win 4 of them, you would say. I think they need to win the next 3. I don't feel like they have that kind of run of form in them anymore. So I think they still have a chance of getting promoted, but not by winning the league.
Yeah, I was thinking over the course of the season, and again, you'll know this better than me. I always think when it comes to Wraith Rovers, it's a team I never study. When we're doing these podcasts, Shaughan can deal with that. Shaughan knows a lot. Shaughan knows more about Wraith Rovers than I can, so just ask him questions about the Rovers, and he can take it from there. But it seems like if you look over your course of the season and your record against Dundee United, you've played them 4 times and you've taken 7 points from them. So that, on the whole, is very good. 2 wins and a draw. But then you also got the clean sweep against Dunfermline. That is also class as well, not just to add to your points total, but just from reputationally and for your esteem and for being the big dogs in the Fife area. Only picking up like 4 points against Arbroath from the 3 matches, like drawn 2 each with them, chucking away a 2-goal lead against them. That's something that Dundee United don't do. They've played, I think they've played Arbroath the 4 times and absolutely decimated them on those 4 occasions. And that's probably, you'll look back at, if there is still a lot of football to be played, I can see your reservations about the Rovers. I might be a bit more cautious about Dundee United because I don't think they're a fantastic team either. So I do think it is going to go down to the wire between the 2 sides. But these are if Wraith Rovers do chuck away the lead and finish in second place, these will be the games you look back on and think that was a massive missed opportunity. Especially if it comes down to, say, it comes down to like 3 points, which are the points that you would have picked up from those games.
Yeah, I mean the games. I mean, let's face it, Arbroath have been stinking this season, and yet Wraith have conspired to throw 5 points away. And Airdrie are good. Airdrie, I've been really impressed with Airdrie. However, to take 1 point out of possible 9, I think Tuesday will be a very, very difficult game again. So they could end the season with 2 points for a possible 12 fed for Airdrie. That's where they've come unstuck.
I suppose, just as a bonus, Shaughan, just while we're in the Championship, Arbroath, I think for a long time we've known that they are going to be dropping into League One, but I think it's going to be confirmed this weekend if they lose to Inverness Caledonian Thistle. There's 9 points between the 2 teams at the moment, but if Cali Thistle win, that's 12 points with 4 games to go, but they've got a far inferior goal difference, so it's just like they're pretty much relegated, and it's not mathematically impossible, but I think everyone knows that'll be the case. What you made of Arbroath's time in the Championship this season?
Oh, I mean, this season's been a bit of bin fire. It feels like never really recovered from the season where they finished second. like the follow-up season, you could tell recruitment wasn't great. The last kind of, I don't know, 18 months or so, I suppose, of Dick Campbell's reign was difficult to watch. Jim McIntyre's come in. I don't know if he was necessarily the right man for the job. Don't think his recruitment has been very good either. And there certainly hasn't been an upturn in fortune since he came in. So yes, I mean, I suppose a poor end to their tenure in the Championship. But if you're an Arbroath fan, so much good stuff to look back on for the time that they have had in the second tier.
I was reading a thread on Pie and Bovril called Next to Go in the League 2 forum. And it's effectively just a discussion about which side is going to be the next one to drop out of the SPFL and into the Highland or the Lowland League. And I was reading some comments back from May 2022. Now, you'll remember in May 2022, Arbroath finished the season in second place. And there was an Arbroath fan there who said they are like natural position. Now, the natural order of things was they were like an upwardly mobile League 1/Championship side. That's where they were. And obviously, like, hindsight's a wonderful thing, but wasn't the case at all there, was it, buddy? I think someone got massively carried away. And it was pointed out to this guy that, well, you've had like Alloa, Dumbarton, like Cowdenbeath, Brechin City. There's two teams that aren't even in the SPFL anymore. They were in the Championship, just like very recent memory, all within the last decade. So it just goes to show you at part-time level, I would use the expression for your spokes in the wheel. All it takes is a bad summer. You point the wrong manager, you alienate players. It could take something like a sponsor leaving, a director moving on, someone calling in a loan, something abstract like that can completely affect a club's season. And there are times where this fan said that, you look at Arbroath and Montrose, they were doddering in the bottom. They just had to get their act together, and that lifted them off the table. But it's like, everyone wants to get their act together. You can't, not if everyone gets their act together at the same time, someone still has to finish bottom of the table. That's how these things work. And I know that we talk about conversations and threads and stuff in Pie and Ball, but that was something that, with the benefit of hindsight, reading that like 2 years down the line, I did find that quite amusing, that where part-time teams can finish and where they are in the overall food chain.
In fairness, if you can't get carried away when you're a part-time team and you've almost won the Championship, when can you get carried away?
I suppose it's just all fun. It's quite funny all the talk about maybe Arbroath going full-time in the long run and seeing if they can kick on. But nevertheless, I'll look forward to my visits to Gayfield next season. And I look forward to buying that guy a pint and tutties and saying, "You're crazy, mate. You're crazy. I like you, but you're crazy." Now, Shaughan, do you want to talk a little bit about some football in League 2?
Let's.
Excellent. Let's analyse the highest scoring game in the division of the weekend, and that was Peterhead 4, Clyde 1. Peter Pollitt proved to be the star man here, scoring a hat-trick for the home side, 2 of which came from the spot. And although Robbie Leach pulled one back on the hour mark, Joe McCree gabbed Peterhead's fourth at the depth. Peterhead, they've moved up into second place. They're closing that gap on Stennismuir to 13 points. And Clyde are still bottom of the table, and they're now 1 point worse off than they were last season. They were 2 points going into this match. Now they're 3 points adrift of Stranraer and Bonnyrigg Rose after they drew 1-1. Shaughan, you'll have seen the same highlights package as myself. You'll have read the same threads in Pie and Bovril as me. What are your thoughts on this game?
Difficult to analyse this game because they've changed the camera position at Peterhead now, and it seems much further away, even though it's presumably as far away as it was previously.
And on top of that as well, it looks like it's been filmed by a voyeur, someone who's... But do you know what I mean? Someone who's used to filming someone through a window far away, and the camera's really, really shaky.
Like Martin Hardy.
Yes, hi, like Martin Hardy.
It was tilted to the side. It was like, I got the impression that this would be the point of view for when you ask a dog something and it's confused and it tilts its head to the side. It wasn't the ideal camera angle.
I think for this match, it felt like bad old Clyde. It really felt like the bad old days because, like the 4-1 scoreline, I think, if you're being honest, Peterhead did not have to work very hard for those goals because 2 of them came from the most... These Stonewall penalties, they weren't made of stone, they were made of bricks and iron. That's how That's how fucking obvious these penalties were. I mean, you said you compared the Tony Watts pit dive like to him looking like a Fisher Price man with his arms stretched out. Oh my goodness. These were really bad penalties, and then to lose 2 goals from corners like that, it did feel like Clyde have taken a big step backwards, and this is on the back of like some very encouraging results as they are striding to. I still think they'll make safety, but it has been a bit of a blow for this one, and it did feel as though that having seen Clyde recently and seen when it all clicks how good they were, this just felt like you've made all this progress and you've taken a huge step back.
It was the first penalty, especially. It was like, I don't know who gave it away, but the way the defender turned and kind of like, you know, like when there's a breakaway on the halfway line, and the defender might think, right, I'll maybe just turn my body here, block the run, and I'll take the booting. But you don't do that. You don't do that. You don't do that in the penalty area. But inexplicably, that's what he decided to do. But everything. I mean, the defender for the penalties, the defending for the corners, Jace Caballa's red card. Although I suppose, well, again, it probably wasn't the best angle, but you can maybe give him the benefit of hindsight. But he was already on a booking, and then it looked like he was just trying to hook the ball back into the penalty box.
Yeah,
but like, he absolutely clattered them. So even that felt like stupidity, especially when the game might even have been done at that point. And Caballa has been pretty decent for Clyde, so he'll be a miss for the next few games. But you're right, this felt like very much a kind of nothing performance from Clyde. And I get that it's the scenario where, well, we don't have a great record up at Peterhead, so wasn't really expecting anything either. But like, there's only 5 games to go, so it was like getting something was quite important, because now you leave yourself with very little margin for error. I'm the same as you. I still think they'll just about make it. I've been thinking for a while now. I'm a wee bit worried about Stranraer.
Yeah, but
regardless, I thought they looked really bad on Saturday.
Aye, I mean, the penalties there, the first one that you mentioned, it was Craig Howie that tripped Peter Pollitt there, and it was, as you say, it felt like a tactical foul there, and Shaughan's just nipped off to fetch somebody. He's switching his lights on and he's coming back. Now, if you are listening to this in audio version, you won't have a clue what we're talking about, but if you're listening to this on the YouTube, then you'll see Shaughan dart off, switch a light on and come back. I was saying there, Shaughan, it was Craig Howie that gave away the penalty, tripping Pollitt. That was bad. Not as bad though as Lee Hamilton's for a foul. I think it was Hamish Ritchie. Now, you know what it looked like, this one? It looked like, imagine someone's about to take a conversion at rugby and someone runs in front of the kicker just as he's about to hit the ball. It's like Lee Hamilton just I've no idea. Like Ritchie's got the ball under control and Hamilton just swipes at it and just boots him up in the air.
He was very late.
Very late. Very aggressive. And Hamilton, I think it's fair to say, has been Clyde's best player since he's come in. Just generally a very good defender and has really galvanised that Clyde team. But you can't do that. No. You can't do that.
Well, you can, but you're not going to get away with
it. You can get away with that. There's one of the things I noticed as well, Shaughan. I'm going through my notes here. There's two things that I wonder if you observed them. The first one, there's a funny moment in the first half where Clyde craft a chance and Liam Scullion cuts him from the left and swings the ball into the box. And as Jordan Allen jumps for it, someone screeches. It sounds like an animal. Like, imagine an elephant playing a trumpet, a cartoon elephant in a jazz band, like who plays his trunk as a trumpet. That's what it sounded like.
It was funny because I don't know if it might have been the same person, but there's definitely somebody close to the camera who just makes noises all the way through.
Yes.
Like at the first penalty, it lets out like a massive yes.
Yes.
So I don't know if it's the same person, because definitely there is unusual noises coming from that direction.
I think it's fair to say, Shaughan, in the lower leagues, we need to move the cameras as far away from supporters as possible. We've got this camera here at Peterhead next to a cartoon elephant. We've got the camera at Forfar Athletic that's so close to the fans, they have to mute the audio when something bad goes against their team. And then we've got the camera at Annan next to that woman that screeches all the time. We need to move the cameras as far away from the fans as possible. Put them on a big crane. Remember Falkirk were doing that? That was one of the competition things. They were going to have a game on the you could view from the back of a big crane. Just get the camera and point it downwards there.
But then the problem would be if you'd done the same as what like what Edinburgh does at all of their games now. You just have no sound whatsoever. And there's no happy medium.
Is there not? I think someone posted this. This might have been on Twitter. It might have been on the the Terrace Discord. But Edinburgh started filming games now from the inside of the leisure centre, and effectively they're filming it through a window.
Yeah.
Now, that really is voyeuristic. It's like Rear Window. Hitchcock, imagine that. Edinburgh City Highlights directed by Alfred Hitchcock.
Because you can kind of see the reflection of the camera when you're in the window.
It's really skeevy. It's like one of those low budget video, when VHS became a big thing that everyone's just flooding the market. Voyeuristic football lower league highlights. But I suppose for this one, a really bad day for Clyde. But with Peter, I suppose you can equally focus on Peterhead. Now, we were at the match between Stennismuir and Peterhead, a couple of weeks ago. Brutal game of football. Really, really dull, really uninteresting. But one of the things I suppose I would question, I really question Peterhead's application in that game, because if they'd beaten Stennismuir, and that was a Stennismuir team who had drawn their past two matches, if they'd beaten Stenny, they'd have closed the gap on them. And then they win this and Stenny draw the next one. Then you're closing it again, and it begins to put a bit of doubt in Stenny's mind. But they just didn't really seem to go for it. They seemed quite happy to see at the start of that match. If both managers said, "Do you guys fancy a point?" and they're like, "Aye, we don't need to play the game." That's kind of how it felt there. Yeah,
no, you're right. It almost felt like they were happy with a point, but from about the 5th minute onwards, which is quite strange. But then I suppose you go back to over the last few months. I mean, like Peterhead rarely lose games. I think it's like maybe 1 defeat in 11. However, the vast majority of those games have been draws. So they are difficult to beat, but it feels like there's still something lacking, I suppose, in the final third. And even though they scored 4 goals,
they didn't have
Clyde, two penalties and 2 corners. Didn't really create very much in open play. But I suppose if they're like, of all the teams in League 2, I still think they might be the ones that, if they come up against Annan, for example, I think they might be the ones that to give them the biggest challenge.
Dumbarton, that's how I'm going to win the playoffs.
I feel they lack the minerals.
Yeah, then as soon as I said that, I realised Stevie Farrell's teams always lose big games. Is there any way you can go back 5 seconds and delete that audio? Yeah, that's the big thing. Although, I mean, I saw Dumbarton at the weekend and I was quite impressed by them. I think that Mark Durnan has added quite a lot to them. Finlay Gray's a really good player. Michael Ruth is definitely someone, if I'm Gary Naismith, I'd be looking at Michael Ruth to take him to Oakview next season. He's a really good player. A handful. I think, and if he had someone up alongside him that was just closer to him that could take advantage of all the good stuff he does, I think you'd get a lot of goals out of him. But I do fancy Dumbarton to make an impact. And I suppose the Spartans have fallen away a wee bit. We've not really spoken about them recently. Yeah. And I suppose for the Spartans, again, watch them. They drew 0-0 with Stenny. Quite similar to, you could copy and paste what you said about Peterhead and apply it to the Spartans. I think both teams would be content with a point at the beginning of that game. But I think that as good a season as they've had, they might be running out of puff a wee bit.
It feels like they're petering now. You know something, the more I think about it, the more it is not beyond realms of possibility that Dumbarton get to the final, but I can see them losing 8-1 on aggregate.
To Queen of the South. Queen of the South, there we go. Just one final thing, Shaughan. Clyde are playing Stranraer at the weekend here. They're playing them at Hamilton. How do you think this one's going to go? You said you're a bit worried about Stranraer. They drew 1-1 with Bonnyrigg at the weekend, but prior to that, it was 3 consecutive defeats.
I fear for Stranraer with this one. And see, even like their game against Bonnyrigg on Saturday, obviously that finished 1-0. Watching the highlights, I thought, my goodness, how have Stranraer not managed to win this? But that was based entirely on the first half. And then in the second half, it really seemed to swing round. And if you're a Bonnyrigg fan, you might have been thinking you were a wee bit unlucky, no to win it. Yeah. And bear in mind how poor Stranraer are on the road. I don't know if anybody's picked up fewer points than them away from home. I think 3 of their final 5 games are away from Stair Park. So I think Saturday's massive for them. But I've now got a wee funny feeling it'll be Stranraer that finished 10th.
I hope not, because I like Scott Agnew, but I think that he's because Scott Agnew is as well thought of at Stair Park as he is from his playing days, and perhaps he's not under the same degree of scrutiny that someone like Jamie Hamill was. Like, I know that Jamie Hamill played for a wee bit at Stranraer, but Jamie Hamill, nobody likes Jamie Hamill. That's the like who is. Whereas Scott Agnew is just like widely well regarded because of he's a nice guy and because he was a good player. And Hamill, I never met Jamie Hamill, but he wasn't a particularly easy in the eye player or easy to look at, if you know what I mean.
I mean, is Agnew's record any better than Hamill when they got rid of him? I'm not so sure, but you're right. I think it's his popularity probably that has kept him in the role rather than perhaps anything that's been happening on the park.
Yeah, I can see Clyde winning this one, but I still think Bonnyrigg. I do when I look at Stranraer, I just think they've got the players here and there. They've got a little bit of stardust that can get them out of bother. Like Dylan Forrest, someone to really like. I think he's better than anyone else in that Bonnyrigg team. I think like Chris Johnson can make things happen out of nothing. Darren Lang, if you need a goal, Darren Lang is your man. You know? But I just when I see Bonnyrigg, I look at the Bonnyrigg team and I think there's not much there. That's team spirit only gets you so far. You do need that little bit of quality in there.
Maybe, but as I say, for that game on Saturday, I was certainly that second half performance. I was reasonably impressed by Bonnyrigg. So I thought that was Stranraer's chance. I really thought that was Stranraer's chance to get 3 points, put Bonnyrigg in a very, very awkward position for the last kind of 5 games or so. But not failing to win that match, I think, puts them in a very difficult situation.
Very quickly, jumping to the top of the table, Shaughan, Stennismuir are playing East Fife. All they need to do is win this match and they win the league title. Do you think they're going to win the league title this weekend?
No, they'll probably draw and lose or something like every other week.
We thinking apparently the wind's supposed to be quite bad, and we were putting in our Stenny group chat. Could you imagine that the game's called off because of the wind and Peterhead dropped points? So like Stenny win the league by default. That'd be rubbish. That'd be absolutely
anticlimactic way ever.
Yes. No, I will be there on Saturday. I'm hopefully next time you and I catch up with each other, we've got some good news to talk about.
Well, listen, good luck, and I really do hope you do it.
No, thank you very much. Thank you very much I listened to the podcast that you and Fraser Clark recorded about the goalkeepers, and it was really nice to see Darren Jameson ranked as highly as he is. But I completely deserved. I think that he is perhaps of all the signings we've ever had at Stennismuir, he is the one that's had the biggest and most transformative impact on the team. And it's guys like that have made everyone better across the board, and hopefully we can do it. But nevertheless, Shaughan and I have spoken for long enough. That's we've spoken about 40 minutes on football, 20 minutes on Ouija's, and you can get Ouija's available on Amazon Prime. You don't need to have subscribed to anything else. Just go and search for Ouija's, WEEGIES, and just get in touch with myself and Shaughan if you've watched it or you want to have a chat about it. Shaughan and I are setting up a specific Ouija's Discord, and you're more than welcome to just chip in with your thoughts about the show, and we'll break it into sub-forums for like main characters, sub-characters, plots, jokes, etc. While you're doing that, oh sorry Shaughan, you're going to chip in with some of your own favourite characters and jokes. You cut out there when you said it's been happening a couple of times in this podcast.
You paused there, sorry.
Oh, did we? But we both paused. Okay, well, listen, enjoy your football, but please do so respectfully. Thanks very much for listening. Subscribe to the Patreon. Cheers, bye.